Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell, and we are creativity coaches who help people fear less, create more, and bring their creative visions to life.
If you're an OG member of the Sparkfile community, hey, welcome back, Sparkler.
Hey, if you're joining us for the first time, hey, welcome, friend.
Know that just by listening to this podcast, you're joining a warm and wonderful clan of creatives.
But, you might be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File?
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know, if you're not careful, your campfire of creativity can flicker out.
But don't despair. We're collecting kindling in the form of fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique curiosity to light a fire under our collective asses to make things like this podcast.
Or an understanding of those sparky aha moments and how we can create the opportunity for more of them.
Ooh, I love this spark already. Every episode.
That's the spirit.
This is it. Every episode, we're going to reach into our spark files and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
That means we have more sparks, friends, than we can possibly use in this lifetime.
I'll say. So if something lights you up, we encourage you to take that thing and make something out of it.
Without further ado, let's open up the Spark
File.
File. Laura Camion.
Susie Q, I can't wait for this spark.
You know, Laura, the reason why I wanted to do this spark, and I think this might be a part one. This might be a part one because, hey, spoiler, everybody. I have been so curious lately. You and I eat, sleep, and breathe creativity. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot about the brain. We talk about the nervous system. But I was like, what is happening in our brains when we make stuff? And I got into this spark and I kind of went down a wormhole of something very specific. But I was like, I think that there is more learning and exploring and spelunking to do in this topic of sort of like, what is happening in our bodies and in our brains when we create?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. And also I'm wondering, are you going to make a distinction between when we begin a creative project versus when we're months into that creative project or we're about to finish it? Because are there different things going on?
Yeah, I think so. And my spark organically made that, decided to segment it. So
Suze, do you want to jump right in? Because I'm so in this already.
Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm, Laura Camion. I feel like you're sounding, you're getting better and better with each passing day.
Thank you so much.
I also want to say, for the record, Your Honor, I like the way your voice sounds right now. And I know that you talk about like the more excited you get, the squeakier you
A
get.
squeak. Yeah.
But I've always loved that sort of Demi Moore, Cherry Jones, Brenda Vaccaro, like when there's a little husk in a woman's voice. Natasha Lyonne has it. I've always loved that. And I remember being in graduate school and I was doing a production of As You Like It with my dear friend Miriam Laube. Hi, Miriam, if you're listening.
Hi, Miriam.
And I said to the person who was doing the speech and voice coaching on the show, I was like, I would really love to have sort of like a husky Cherry Jones type. And she was like, no,
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Like that is something that you have it or you don't. What you would have to do to your voice to get to that.
She's like, I can't condone that. I won't do it.
I'm not signing off on it. So, but I do remember, I've always loved that sound.
I'm laughing because everybody I've been seeing like online, people teasing like Austin Butler because he just played Elvis.
Right.
And his voice, he's maintaining a bit of this Elvis sound. And, you know, there's some people that are like eye rolling. And then there's some people that are just like, it's awesome. Keep it. And he's like, look, I lived with this for a year.
Right.
I don't know what to say, except that it's not just going to go away in a second because he really worked to kind of make it his own. And so I'm thinking, you know, we'll see. Maybe I'll keep of this respiratory infection. Maybe I'll keep this part.
This is your Elvis.
This is my Elvis.
Right. In any event, let me spark you.
Oh, I'm here for it. Thank you, Susan.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad you're here because you've been sick and I'm glad you're back, baby. You're back. So back when I was exploring my recent Toni Morrison spark, and I was listening to The Bluest Eye, talk about a voice on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I read a story about this aha moment that Toni Morrison experienced while watching a young girl playing with her baby dolls. And in that moment, Morrison realized that she had never read a book with a Black girl as the main character. And that was what inspired her to write that first novel, The Bluest Eye. And clearly that aha moment not only transformed her career, but also helped to break down barriers in the publishing industry. So when we make these sparks for you, for each other, and for you all, there's so much that lands on the cutting room floor. So here's another piece that landed on the cutting room floor. There was this story about how Toni Morrison was struggling with a particular scene in her book, Song of Solomon. And after many attempts, she just couldn't get it right until one day she was ironing her clothes and she had this aha moment. She suddenly realized that the scene needed to be told from a different character's point of view. And Morrison, because she's a great fucking writer, said the idea came to her in a kind of fluid rush and she felt like she had swallowed light.
What?
After making the change, Morrison was thrilled with the results and she said, I laughed for a whole week. I kept looking at the pages and every time I looked at them, I would start to laugh because it was like somebody else had written it.
Oh.
Just gorgeous. She felt like she had swallowed light. Love that.
I love that. And I also love that feeling. I've not felt this on the Toni Morrison level, so I don't mean to be comparing myself to her in any way, but I have had that sensation of like going back to read pages and be like, who wrote this? I don't remember writing this. And it's such a magical feeling.
I love the feeling when it's like, oh, elves cobbled it in the night. Every once in a while now, and I always attribute this to a function of an aging brain, where I'll go back and I'll read something that you or I or you and I had written like a year ago. And I'm like, oh my God.
How did this come to be?
I bet that took a lot of time to write. And I'm so pleased that we have this treasure trove of like talks we've given and curriculum we've written and just like all of this great material. And I'm like, who wrote that? I'm curious. As I talk, I want you to be thinking about this. I'm going to ask you in a second.
Okay.
If you can recall when you have experienced one of these aha moments in your creativity. So I'm going to give you a few more examples. So when Lin-Manuel Miranda was writing the musical Hamilton, apparently he spent countless hours working on that opening number, trying to find the right words and melody to sort of capture the essence of the show. And after months of struggling, he finally had this breakthrough moment when he wrote the line, "How does a bastard orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by Providence, impoverished in squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar?" Lynn felt an incredible sense of joy and relief, and he later described the moment as the most satisfying creative moment of his life.
Oh, wow.
And that is a hell of a line.
Wow.
Internal rhymes, like it's amazing.
Yeah. And sums up the whole thing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
In another example, in 1905, a young patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, named Albert Einstein was walking home from work when he had a sudden insight. I've heard this described as if he was imagining himself like basically riding on a beam of light. And he described this experience of feeling like a storm broke loose in his mind, and said that all of a sudden everything fell into place. And that moment, that aha, led him to develop the theory of special relativity, which fundamentally changed our understanding of space and time. It also led him to develop the famous equation E equals mc squared, which relates mass and energy and has important implications for nuclear physics. And that was just him, a young patent clerk, 1905,
Wow.
Bern, Switzerland, just walking home from work. So Cams, as I describe these to you, and I know it doesn't have to be like on the level of Toni Morrison or Albert Einstein, but have you ever had, even in a small way, that moment when an idea suddenly just pops into place?
Yeah.
It feels like the clouds have parted. Maybe you've swallowed a little light.
Yeah. I have. I mean, in much smaller ways. And they're yet to be like life defining or career defining, like some of the examples that you just gave. But, I remember in writing Echo Speaks, which Susan was in, and it's, I would say, one of the things that I've written that I've like so close to my heart. But in the end, I don't know how to explain this to people who don't know the show, but in the end, this woman she's speaking about herself in the third person. But when it kind of came down to the truth is she's a liar. That is the whole piece in the shortest sentence, in the clearest way.
And did it just flow out of your hands as you were? Where were you when that came to you? Do you remember?
I was writing just in a journal, and as much of that show was written just in bits and pieces in a journal. And I mean, sometimes those moments happen for me when I'm asking my question, just like, what's this all about? And I might already have 100 pages of something. I'm like, but what's it all about? And it's this like clarity when that can come through, like, it's this.
Yeah.
The truth is she's a liar. And those moments are so thrilling. I don't know what else to say. I want to hear yours too.
I've heard you describe it as like a puzzle piece clicking into place. When we're in our creativity groups and we're doing feedback sessions, we talk about how it's not, as responders, it's not our job to suggest to the artist how they might rewrite their work. It really is supporting them as they are helping them find that puzzle piece to click into place.
That something happens in their mind.
That's right.
That helps them see their work and understand their work with more clarity.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So this moment is often called the aha moment or a breakthrough moment. And it's an incredible feeling that artists, writers, musicians, scientists, creatives of all kinds have experienced throughout history. Would you like to hear some more ahas from different artists?
I do, yes.
I had so much fun seeking these out and finding these. And spoiler alert, if you look at the circumstances of each one, you can learn a thing or two about how to get your mind right to set the stage for ahas. So Lady Gaga had been struggling with writer's block and feeling frustrated with the creative process. And one day she was taking a break from working on the album and she had an idea. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga said that she was in the shower and she suddenly heard a melody in her head. She immediately jumped out of the shower, dripping wet, ran to the piano to record the melody before she lost it.
Mm-hmm.
And that melody became the basis for her song, The Edge of Glory, which went on to become a huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
She described this moment as one of the most amazing experiences of her life. She said that she felt a rush of energy and excitement as the melody came to her. She knew it was something special. She felt like she had unlocked a part of herself that she didn't even know existed, and it filled her with a sense of joy and purpose. Or as Toni Morrison would say, she felt like she swallowed light.
I mean, I just keep having this image of like learning to be a lightning rod and welcoming that light, welcoming that bolt of energy and channeling it onto the page or onto the piano or wherever. I want more of this, and I want to leave here knowing how to be even more of this lightning rod.
So there's this visual artist named Micheline Thomas, and Micheline does these big art pieces. She's a fine artist, and she's inspired by art history and popular culture. And she tells of this aha moment when she discovered how to incorporate rhinestones into her art, which led to her signature style of using glitter and rhinestones to add dimension and
Wow.
texture to her portraits. And in this interview on NPR, Micheline Thomas described the moment when she found this solution. She said, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the missing piece. This is the thing that I was looking for.
Oh, I love that.
Like straight up puzzle piece. Paul McCartney woke up with a melody in his head and assumed it was a song that he had heard before. And after realizing it was new, he immediately wrote down the lyrics and music for Yesterday, which is now considered to be one of the greatest songs of all time.
Unbelievable. I've always wondered like how musicians do it. Like I would question myself, have I heard this before? Is that why it's coming to me?
Yeah, exactly. Lizzo. Sparks are everywhere, people. Lizzo experienced a creative breakthrough while working on her hit song, Truth Hurts. She had been struggling to come up with the perfect lyrics for the chorus, had rewritten several versions that didn't feel right. One day, taking a break from the songwriting process, stepping away, scrolling through social media, came across a meme that said, I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% that bitch.
That bitch. Ha!
And immediately she knew it was the missing piece of her chorus.
Sit right there.
In an interview with Rolling Stone, Lizzo described the moment as a spiritual awakening.
Oh my gosh.
And said that she felt a rush of energy and excitement when she realized that she had finally found the right words for the song. She quickly recorded the new version of the chorus, and the rest is history. Truth Hurts went on to become one of the biggest hits of the year, earning Lizzo multiple Grammy nominations and catapulting her to super stardom.
Incredible. Incredible.
I think it's worth noting that, and I feel like this is a drum that we bang all the time, that these artists are being struck. These are world-class artists, and they know they've got to get it down. Whether you're Lady Gaga or you're Lizzo or you're Paul McCartney, you know things that seem like a bolt of lightning and so indelible can shimmer away if you don't get them in your Spark file or in your computer or down in your journal.
That's right.
So word to the wise.
But Suze, you have not said a moment of yours when you've had that.
One that I thought of, and again, like you were saying, none of these are on the scale of the ones that I'm citing here. I'm using these to make a point, but if I can just share something that you had said, we do what we call a spark round, which is essentially a name game at the top of each time our creativity group meets. And I feel like it was a creative win you've experienced recently or something, but you said that you had been really rumbling and kind of struggling with this piece of the screenplay that you're writing now. And you had recently cracked it. You had made a breakthrough with it. And I think that that is as significant in the lives of us as creatives.
Yeah.
You don't have to always go on to win multiple Grammys, is all I'm saying.
Yes. Okay. And also to that end, to create one bit of work It isn't like Lin-Manuel wrote that lyric and was like, and I'm done. This thing is perfect.
Oh my God.
It's like a series of those moments.
A series of breakthroughs. But I say all of that to manage your expectations about what I'm about to share.
Okay, gotcha.
So Hunter Bell and I co-wrote this piece together called My First Time. And the prompt was they had asked us to perform at this was years and years ago. We were asked to perform at a benefit. It was a benefit for people with autism, and the theme was My First Time. And the idea was that performers would tell stories about the first time they had been on Broadway. Hunter and I had yet to be on Broadway at that time. And so we were like, we don't have anything for you, but how we interpreted the prompt is we'll tell the stories of the first time we went to see Broadway shows.
Uh-huh.
And further, we decided that we would intertwine them. So his was Annie and mine was Angels in America. So we simultaneously told the story of him as a child going to see Annie and me as a young adult going to see Angels in America. So we juxtaposed those two against each other. Sometimes it was very funny, and then sometimes it was very poignant. And as we were sitting, I remember clearly we were sitting on the very same couch where we wrote title of show, and we were sitting on the brown couch. He had his back against one arm. I had my back against the other arm. And he was sort of we both were journaling about really indelible images from those first Broadway shows we had never seen, and just like the impact they had made on us. And then literally in one afternoon, very quickly, that piece just like came together. And the way that I've described it is it was like an aha for me. He took his deck of cards and I took my deck of cards, and we just like a Las Vegas poker dealer just shuffled them together like brrp, and it just came together. And it gives me a feeling in my body just telling you it was like an aha.
Like, yeah.
That's a little bit more processy. But I remember the first time I had that feeling with Jeff Bowen. He and I were collaborating on the first thing we ever made together, sitting next to him on the piano. And I felt this, it's like an energy rises up in my body and puzzle pieces just start to fall into place. And it just goes click, 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 click. And that to me is what it feels like.
Those are the moments. That's what I think keeps us going.
Yeah. You want to hear another one?
I want to hear more. I'm so into it.
Okay. Let's hear from the greats. So filmmaker James Cameron was struggling to come up with the design for the alien queen in his movie Aliens, all those movies.
That little ditty.
So he decided to take a break and go for a walk in the woods, put a star next to that. And as he was walking, he came across a log that had been split open, revealing the inside of the log. And the image of the exposed wood gave him an idea for the design of the alien queen's head. And he immediately went back to the studio to sketch out his idea.
Wow.
And he later described the moment as a feeling like a bolt of lightning.
Yes.
It was the breakthrough he needed to move forward with the project. He felt a sense of excitement and energy that fueled his creativity and allowed him to continue and complete the movie. So those are just a few examples of the incredible power of the aha moment and how it can live in the arts, in science. It could be there's an idea that comes to you for a cake that you want to bake or decorate. Like it can live in so many forms. But this is what is curious to me. What is happening in our brains when we experience this sudden burst of insight?
What is it?
What is it? Thanks to researchers Mark Beeman and John Cunios at Northwestern University, because those fine fellows did a study on creativity and found that when people are being creative, their brains go into a special mode where they use both the right and the left sides of their brain at the same time. And these aha moments happen when people, obviously, they're trying to solve a problem and then suddenly they're struck with the solution. So in the study, Mark Beeman and John Cunios gave people word puzzles and monitored their brain activity with an EEG machine. So basically, they would give people 3 seemingly unrelated words, and the task was to come up with a 4th word that would combine with each of those 3 words to make a new meaningful word or phrase. So, for example, they might give people the words pine, crab, and sauce. And if you're looking for that 4th word that can connect and combine to all of them, pine, crab, sauce. Listeners, anything, just just take a breath. Don't concentrate too hard. Pine, crab, sauce. The answer would be apple, because it can be combined with each of the 3 words to make pineapple, crab apple, and applesauce. So these puzzles are called CRA tasks. CRA stands for Cognitive Reconstruction of Associations. It is a theory that suggests that creative insights or aha moments occur when our brains make unexpected connections between previously unrelated pieces of information. And these connections occur through the reconstruction of our cognitive associations, leading to the creation of new and innovative ideas. The CRA theory is often used to explain how creativity works and how people can cultivate more creative insights. So CRA tasks are interesting because they require people to make creative connections similar to the kind of creative thinking required in many real-life situations, what you might call creation through recombination cams. That is a term that I have heard you use.
Yes.
And I think that is exactly what they're talking about with these, not only with these CRA tasks, but also what's happening in Lady Gaga's mind or what's happening in Lizzo's mind. 1 million other people probably saw that meme. I just took a DNA test, found out I'm 100% that bitch. And we're just like, ha ha, and kept on scrolling.
And move on by.
They might have tapped like, but they just moved on by. But she combined it with, she might have had a musical figure sampled in her computer that she had been listening to a lot. And, she combined something in that moment, I think.
That's right. That's right. Also, Suze, I have to stop you and ask, do you know something that I don't know about the pronunciation of Lady?
No, I'm just being a fool.
Oh, no. Okay, good. I like you being a fool. I just was like, gosh, I wonder if I've been saying it wrong all this time.
I'm just being an idiot. There's a very old Steve Martin joke that I love about teaching babies to talk wrong.
What?
Just like a long grift where you teach babies to talk wrong. And I think it would be amazing if I just completely gaslit you. Didn't you see? It was all over the headlines that we're all saying Lady Gaga or she'll answer to Gaga.
Oh my God. Please keep going.
Please forever and ever keep going. So back to these CRA tasks and these connections that happen when creative thinking is occurring. By monitoring people's brain activity while they solved these puzzles, these researchers, Beeman and Kunios, were able to see how the brain processes creativity in real time. And the reason why I keep poking, like as I talk to Camian, I keep poking behind my ear. It's because
like right back here.
That's where shit's going down.
Oh, yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Is that your left side? That's your right side.
I forget if it's my left or my right, but I know it's something that's popping off like right behind the ear.
Right behind the ear on one of the sides.
On one of the sides, yeah. So maybe this is not science-based, but maybe just massage behind your, just kidding, it's not science-based. So I thought this was a super interesting sidebar. And when I came across this thing that I'm about to share, I was like, oh, I recognize this in myself. Ooh, do I recognize this in my creative processes?
Oh, can't wait.
Beeman and Kunios identified 2 different types of thinking that people use when trying to solve problems creatively: analytical thinking and insight thinking. Analytical thinking is the kind of thinking we use when we break a problem down into smaller parts and try to solve it step by step. This type of thinking is often deliberate, focused. It involves a lot of mental effort. Insight thinking, on the other hand, is more spontaneous and intuitive. It often happens when we're not actively trying to solve a problem.
Mhm.
So it's that sudden aha moment when a solution seems to come out of nowhere like a bolt of lightning. Insight thinking often involves making unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of information.
You know what's funny, Suze, as you say that, I think I've thought of a couple things. One is like I took philosophy in college to fulfill some, requirement. And I ended up getting like an A plus in the class, which was hilarious to me and my like roommates at the time because I didn't study or anything. But part of it is that insight thinking because there isn't a wrong answer.
Oh,
Another thing it reminds me of is if you've ever played a game of like in a museum, which I know you don't go to, but if you did and you just pass by artwork, you're like, what does this say to you? And if you've ever just played sort of a little improv game of like, well, I think the red
yeah,
is clearly standing for the blood and the depth of
yeah.
the agony, the generational pain of this family. And like you're making it up. It's not wrong, but it's also not right. It doesn't matter because there isn't a right or wrong. Does that make sense?
It's just creative expression.
It's just creative expression.
Yeah.
And you're not so worried about like, I'm not solving a problem of like, will this bridge withstand the weight of 1,000 cars on it?
Right.
That's a
right.
different problem solving.
That's a different spark for a different day. But I think where my mind goes with this analytical thinking versus insight thinking is this. I don't actually write about this in my spark, but I observe in myself and in others that people really get addicted to the aha and swallowing light, that feeling that comes when a spark, and sometimes they lose steam when it comes to following through on a creative project. And sometimes when analytical thinking is required, it really falls apart for them.
Okay. So can I interject with two questions for you?
Sure.
The first question is, so in that first, like where you're saying the experience like behind our ears here of this spark of insight and aha, do they talk about dopamine being involved and a burst of dopamine happening?
They don't in the materials that I was looking at.
Okay.
But I'm certain there is a strong chemical cascade in the body. If Toni Morrison is saying, I feel like I swallowed light, and James Cameron feels like he was struck by lightning, there's a strong chemical response in the body. I just don't know what the makeup is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they talked about that. And then I wondered, question number 2 is the experiment you described captures like the neurological activity around that spark and that aha. Now cut to more challenging analytical work needs to get done for the next answer and what's going on in the brain.
This is
Yeah.
why I said at the top, I think I have to do a part 2 on this because
Uh-huh.
I got
Yeah.
I got so into this aha moment, and I was also
Yeah.
like, we could spark all night on this one.
But I think it's so fascinating, Suze, you're really onto something because as we work with clients, we have witnessed it. We've experienced it personally, but we've witnessed it with clients and trying to get to how to be of service and support to someone who wants to abandon their creative project because they've hit this moment.
Yes.
Now there's a different kind of work that needs to get done and it feels hard and you're slugging through it and you'd rather switch to a brand new project.
Because you might be addicted to the aha.
Uh-huh.
So here's an example ripped from the headlines of your own life. You are a screenwriter and you
Mhm.
know, and you're in the thick of it right now,
Mhm.
that it requires, I'm certain you probably had, when you decided what you were going to spend, what you knew would be months of your
Months.
life
Yeah.
writing a screenplay, there was like I'm sure a thrill of like landing on what the subject matter was going to be.
Yeah.
And that's your insight moment, your insight thinking. this analytical thinking that is required when there's real craft, learned craft that goes in, practiced craft that goes into
Yeah.
screenwriting. And that analytical thinking can also lead to ahas when you're
Yes.
parsing something analytically and you can be like, Eureka, I got it.
And the cycle continues.
And the cycle continues.
What you're saying is really interesting, Suze, because I look back at projects in my early life, started and unfinished. And what I now see likely happened was exactly that burst of excitement around the original spark, the original aha. A lot of work goes into it. Next level of like sharing it and then discovering there's more work to be done. And then being like, oh, I'm overwhelmed by that and it's not as fun anymore and set it aside. And just recently with this screenplay, all of this like learning has taken many years and many decades. But what I have learned now, I literally just on Sunday did just a gathering of friends to do a table read. It's like draft 1.5, 1.5. Like I had a draft and then I reworked the second act. And so I know it's not that far along, but you still have the excitement and the rush of like,
Yeah.
this is this moment. And both of these things can be true. It was an incredibly successful table read, and I have a lot more work to do.
Sure.
And now you repeat the process and the learning that not giving up in this moment
Yeah.
is how you get to great work. I think as creatives, we owe it to ourselves to learn how to think both ways that you're talking about.
You know, that is one of my what do we make of this?
Oh, yes.
It has to be. And I
Yeah.
mean, just to jump my own spark, like
Yeah.
it is my observation of self and others that when somebody lives too much in either insight thinking or analytical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough row to hoe when you're trying to be creative, when you're trying to, put it out there as a creative artist.
Yeah.
I think we have all seen, and I know I am actually guilty of being someone who, from time to time, I get that thrill sitting on Hunter Bell's couch and feeling like it's as easily as shuffling a deck of cards.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's like overworked, sweaty, like because I couldn't figure it out via insight thinking. And so I had to rely on analytical thinking.
And the longer form thing that you're working on, the more absolute certainty it's not going to happen in an afternoon.
Oh, God.
It's as if like if you took that piece that you created and then decided we would like to make an entire musical built around this idea. Well, you may have a free-flowing process, but you're not going to create a musical an entire night, perfectly structured evening in one sitting. It's just not going to happen.
First of all, I just want to say congratulations on having that table read. We haven't even had time to talk about it. So proud of you. We love it. Keep going. And I also want to say that thing that you just said about these two things, we hold these two truths to be evident, that it can be a really satisfying, wildly successful table read, and you can know the truth that you have a lot of work to do on the piece. I think that when we were younger, and I'm talking specifically about you and I, we wanted those early drafts so badly to come out fully formed and perfect.
Yes.
That we would abandon stuff in the midst of the process. But what you just described is so healthy. It's a positive prognosis for your piece because it's such a healthy thing that you could be there, be present, enjoy it, not be completely tormented that it wasn't a fully formed, perfect thing, that it scares you off of working on it. That you could be like, that was fun and great, and I have miles to go on this. I love that.
I mean, I guess I've just really come to understand if you want a multi-layered, complex work of art, you cannot create layers in one sitting. you know what I mean?
cannot.
Think of a painting.
Yes.
You got
Yeah.
to let that first layer dry, and now
Yeah.
you're ready to put on another layer.
You might be able to if it's a shorter piece. So for instance, that piece that I was describing, that I was very pleased with that piece, very proud of it. It was a 6-minute piece. You know what I mean?
And there are sections of longer form pieces that same I've had like, oh my God, I just wrote that in one setting and I don't know that I would change that much of it. That was like a little free write and it came out pretty close to baked and I love it. But it was a piece of
Yeah.
something, right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
why we call it a piece.
A piece of a piece. Okay, so you were asking a little bit about what's happening in the brain and why am I massaging behind my ears. I think
Yeah.
that this might address this a little bit.
Okay.
So, in their study, Beeman and Kunios found that the people who solved the word puzzles with a sudden insight, who were using insight thinking
Uh-huh.
or had that aha moment, there was a burst of activity in the right hemisphere of their brain just before they solved the puzzle.
Wow.
So there's this discovery that they made that when people are primed for this aha moment, they tend to be more relaxed and less focused on the task at hand. And this is because their brains are busy making connections and associations that lead to the insight. So essentially, if I understand the research correctly, a second before the aha happens,
Uh-huh.
there's this burst of alpha wave activity that occurs. So there's this sort of alpha wave. I'm waving my hands in the air as if this is what alpha waves look like. But this is how I pictured it. It's like, and then the spark sparks. And again, it's typically associated with a relaxed, unfocused state, which suggests a certain level of mental relaxation
Yeah.
is required for this to occur. And this is why many people find that taking a break or stepping away from a problem can often lead to the creative breakthrough. So, Cams, this reminds me of Sparks you've done about how creativity thrives when we are bored, how creativity thrives when we are in nature.
Yes.
We've talked about meditating. So many things come to me as I
Yes.
meditate, like problem solving, walking in the shower, driving, just like
Yep.
mindlessly mind wandering while we're driving.
Yep.
I feel like when we walk our brains into this state, it's like we are prepping the soil for the papawi, for the seedling to burst through.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Papawi is a word I learned from Laura Camion on the Spark File. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Lady Gaga.
I love it.
Papawi.
And Suze, one other thing that I want to say this reminds me of when we're talking about past sparks and stuff. So the puzzle piece spark, it reminds me of this because if you've ever worked on a puzzle that is going to take you longer than one afternoon to do, sometimes you go to bed and the next morning you're walking by and that little section that you had been agonizing over, you walk by and you're like, oh, I see it.
Uh-huh.
You have the aha moment. You're like, I know where that piece is.
That's a real aha moment.
That's a real aha moment. Now, putting together a puzzle also develops the analytical, because also if you've been working on a puzzle and you're literally at a standstill, you're like, okay, I'm not seeing it. I'm going to go piece by piece and I'm going to organize the pieces by this shape, and this shape.
Uh-huh.
And I will try these shapes until I find the one.
Yep.
So when we have talked before about doing puzzles being so good for the brain, it's developing both of those things, I think.
It's working both sides. Bingo.
I might start a puzzle tonight.
There's your aha. This spark, I have to tell you, helped me to integrate some things that you have shared with me before in those aforementioned sparks.
Wow.
I had my own aha with it where I was like, oh, that's the boredom spark. That's the nature spark. That's the, like, why does it matter that we go and sit and just watch the clouds roll by or watch a fire burn? You're cultivating a brain space that can do this. I also just have to say, this is helping me for this reason as well. I observe in myself sometimes how I try to use one thinking when the other would be more beneficial.
Really?
So, for instance, I just pulled all my tax materials together for the accountant to do my taxes. And
Hey.
that's a moment where I feel like analytical thinking is super helpful in
Yeah.
order to make sure I was cross-checking, cross-referencing, like, here's my American Express bill, here's the receipts that I have documented as hard copy receipts, making sure that nothing fell through the cracks. And that to me is super analytical. And sometimes when I'm fatigued, I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to use a softer kind of thinking where I'm like, I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm just going to see if I pick up anything that seems like it might have fallen through the cracks, when really that's a time when analytical thinking would serve me, and vice versa. I'm sure there are times when I try to apply analytical thinking to what I think of as like softer creative problem solving.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, it may not be the inspired choice in those situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and are you conscious of that choice?
Well, I am now. I am actually. And it usually, and in all honesty, it usually is tied to fatigue.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there are times when I know when my analytical thinking is required, those are things I've said this on the podcast before, I should do them in the morning. I
Uh-huh.
have a greater capacity for analytical thinking in the morning.
Yeah.
And insight thinking, I feel like, can occur when my brain is a little more wandering.
Makes sense.
But at the same time, I'm very creatively fertile in the morning. So what does that say? I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, your brain is rested and ready to go on either task
Yeah.
that you require of it.
I love that this spark brought you back to, I think I'm going to do a puzzle tonight. Keep that brain sharp, Cami in. We need it. The spark file needs it.
Thank you. The more conscious I become of the benefits, the more aware I am that, like, even while doing a puzzle, then my brain might be putting together the pieces of like the sequence of scenes in a screenplay
You
that has
bet.
been troubling me.
Because you're sort of distracting your conscious brain. I remember my teacher, Linda Berry, talking about this, how she would, when she was painting and drawing, she would put on old television shows in the background and she wasn't paying attention to them. But she said, I remember this clearly, this gives this certain part of my brain, it is engaging with the TV show and it's just sort of like keeping it company and keeping it busy so that this insightful part of the brain can be making the painting.
Yeah,
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to get to the papawi, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this.
There's this John Cleese quote that I love and I refer to it. I didn't even know this is what I'm aiming at when I shared it. But I think you've probably heard me say to clients from time to time when we're in coaching situations, where I'll say, I think the best approach would be to gently rest your thoughts against this thing that you are trying to solve
Uh-huh.
and see what your brain delivers back to you instead of looking at it directly and like trying to solve for it. I think what I'm trying to say is, I think that insight thinking may serve you better here than analytical thinking. Now I have more language for it. But there's this
Uh-huh.
John Cleese quote that I love that has informed that. And this is it. John Cleese was one of the Monty Pythons, and
Yeah.
he's a great artist, but and also really as obsessed with creativity as Laura and I are.
And Suze, I just read his little book last year. I was going to do a spark on it, but I haven't gotten around to it. But it's just a little book that came out last year
Yeah,
with a lot of his creative thoughts.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like a lot of his creative thoughts. He said, "This is the extraordinary thing about creativity. If you just keep your mind resting against the subject in a friendly but persistent way, sooner or later you will get a reward from your unconscious." To me, that quote is a great description of insight thinking.
I love that. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we've explored what it feels like to have an aha moment and what is happening in our brain when it occurs. But why are ahas so beneficial? I think I'm
Mhm.
probably stating the obvious and preaching to the choir, but experiencing creative aha moments can be beneficial for a number of reasons. It can provide a sense of accomplishment and boost self esteem. I know I have had that feeling. Like it feels like a reason to live. It feels like, it feels like life is moving through you. as the person has solved the problem or created something new, it can lead to increased motivation and inspiration to continue creating.
Mm.
Additionally, experiencing creative breakthroughs has been linked to improved cognitive function and mental flexibility. It can also help reduce stress and improve overall well being by providing a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Finally, creative breakthroughs can lead to new opportunities and discoveries, whether in art, science, or other fields. So, we've referred to it, but how can we increase the aha moments in our life? Let's get the ratio of aha moments up.
Yeah.
There are
Yes.
several ways you can cultivate alpha wave activity in your brain to increase the likelihood of experiencing ahas. Here are a few suggestions. Meditation. Meditation is a great way to calm your mind and increase alpha wave activity. Try to meditate for at least 10 to 15 minutes a day to clear your mind and improve your focus. Exercise. You've heard us say all of these things before. Just a gentle reminder. Regular exercise has been shown to increase alpha wave activity. Engage in activities that you enjoy, like yoga, swimming, walking, to boost your brain activity. Listening to music. Listening to music
Mm.
can help relax your mind and increase alpha wave activity. Choose music that you enjoy or find calming to help get your brain in a creative state, or like rip it up with some. I feel like that is so personal. Like
Yeah.
maybe listening to speed metal like does something that,
Yeah.
yeah. Mindfulness, practicing mindfulness throughout the day can help keep your mind calm and focused. Try to stay present and aware of your surroundings, paying attention to the sights, sounds, and sensations and broken logs around you, James Cameron. I'll also say, I think nature, I don't always remember to do it, even though I have an abundance of nature around me, but being in nature, I feel like is a big one.
Yeah.
And remember, everyone's brain is unique. So what works for one person, what works for
Mhm.
Lizzo, may not
Mm.
work for James Cameron, may
Uh-huh.
not work for Toni Morrison,
Yep.
may work for you. So experiment with different approaches. Find what works best for you to cultivate that alpha wave activity and increase your chances of experiencing creative breakthroughs.
I love all of those ideas. There's just no downside to taking on more of that.
It's so funny because I feel like all roads lead to Rome with
Yes.
creativity, self care, mental health, physical health. And we
Yeah.
know it. And it's just whether we choose to engage with it or not. And
Mhm.
listen, I'm talking to myself here. Like we know that exercise, nature, meditation, like we know.
And that's why, like, I really believe, like, find those things that you actually enjoy doing and worry less about, like, does this have to mean 90 minutes in the gym? No,
No, no, no, no,
it
no.
doesn't.
It can mean a walk around the block.
Yeah, a walk in the park.
It can mean like going and taking a bath. It can mean chopping vegetables.
I love it. If this means more aha moments, I'm totally into it.
I think it does. And I also just want to stress again, when the aha moment comes to you, because it seems like that lightning strike is going to always be so sharp and clear in your mind, just write it down. Just pop it in your
Oh
Spark file.
gosh, yes. Write it down.
Just write it down. I think I'm going to close with this bit about William Wordsworth's poem, The Prelude. This is an autobiographical poem, and in it, Wordsworth describes a moment of epiphany that he experienced while walking through the countryside, which led to the composition of The Prelude. This passage is often cited as an example of the kind of transcendent, interconnected feeling that can be associated with creative breakthroughs. A sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. That sounds like swallowing light to me, William Wordsworth.
Wow.
And that's my SPAC,
Wow.
Laura Camion.
Suze, I love this spark. I love this spark.
I do too.
Yes, thank you so much for this.
But as I said earlier, I have so many more questions about what else is happening.
Right. What happens next? Yes.
I mean, I'm right on time. And I also feel like a tiny bit remiss because we sleep, eat, and breathe creativity. We talk about it all the time. But I'm like, why? Why does it feel so good? That was really the question I was asking.
Mhm.
Why does creativity feel so good? And I think this is part of the answer. I don't think it's all of it, but I think it's part of
It's
it.
part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it. And also learning that it doesn't always feel like that.
It sure
Like
doesn't.
that's at its peak. And yet, if we have the expectation that I'm going to get into a project and it's going to feel that way start to finish,
We're setting ourselves up for disappointment.
that's right.
And then there's all sorts of other complications, resistance and hidden counter commitments.
Mhm.
And that's frankly I didn't think I would take it here, but I think that's why having somebody on the outside, like a creativity coach or a creativity group, is super helpful, because when the going gets tough, they can help and
Absolutely.
support and look for those things where, have you thought about this might
Mhm.
be at play? Because it isn't as easy as flipping a switch and being like, I'll be analytical in this moment. I'll be insightful in this moment.
That's right.
It's more complicated than that.
And I think that when you're not getting the dopamine from your project itself, it can be helpful to have that support system around you that helps to feed you and create some dopamine hits that you need to keep going until your project can feed you those again.
I'll definitely do a part 2. And when I do that part 2, I will do some research and find out what's the chemical cascade that's happening in the body.
Yeah, I would love
when it
that.
happens. It's got to be dopamine. There's got to be.
It's got to be in there somewhere. There might be others as well, but
that leads to ... my non-scientific assumption that consumption of whether it's television, media, whatever it is a cheap counterfeit for creativity, because I'm chasing dopamine.
Yes.
I'm chasing the dopamine,
Yes.
whether it's scrolling through TikTok, buying shit, like I'm chasing cheap dopamine instead of manufacturing it in that little spot behind my ear in the right hemisphere of my brain.
That's right.
That's right.
Dopamining.
That's Laura Camian's new trademark biohack. Well, that's a surprising, what do we make of it? Dopamining. That's amazing. Oh, friends, that's it. This episode of The Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape people. And as always, we hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen to me. If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you'd like to learn more about how to coach with us to bring your creative ideas to life, you can email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you got to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast if you are so moved. It really does help other listeners to find us. Also, if you like this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, that's interesting, because we just took this DNA test. Turns out we're 100% those bitches, and you can fuck yourself. You just go straight up fuck yourself. That's the energy we want to close on, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's very us.
It's very on brand.
If something lights you up and gets your creative sparks flying, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that has been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
You know, you got to take it
and make it.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.